would you be willing just to have the clerk put you under oath and state that since you sign up to run for office...
No, sir, I am not in the courtroom. You are not a judge. You are not deposing me, and I know my rights. Right. So you can take that out. Well, okay? I am not under deposition. I am not under deposition.
Do I have a motion?
They need to hear the other side.
What's just the other side? That we put your house in and you put Coconut Grove to protect you, to protect your assets, sir? Is that the other side? Let's go. Let's go. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about how you put Coconut Grove to protect your homestead and to protect your house, because
it ain't gonna happen.
This man wants to stop me and all he can, and we're gonna battle here.
Commission meeting is now in recess. Thank you.
Chair. Happy New Year. Feliz Año Nuevo, Roy.
If you say so.
It's a new dawn. It's a new day in the city of Miami, certainly in Miami City Hall. That bully Joe Carollo he's not just going to be up there on the dais pushing people around anymore, because we've got a new sheriff in town. We'll be talking with Commissioner Miguel Gabela, Mike Gabela, who replaced your boy, Alex Diaz-Laportilla, Roy, who you remember was
my boy,
arrested on charges including bribery, money laundering, and campaign finance crimes. Your boy.
I fully endorse him, yeah. That's my boy.
Later in the show, Marc Caputo joins us to stick a fork in what's left of the DeSantis primary campaign. And later, my grandpa is on the program. Abuelo is the new poppy. Here on Because Miami. But, Roy, I got to tell you, it's so heartening to see somebody on the dais speaking truth to power, pushing back, telling the truth. I mean, it's been exhausting watching the Miami Mafia circle the wagons and put their head in the sand. And Joe Carollo especially has been up there pushing people around, not just in the city government and his fellow commissioners, but the residents and the business owners and the taxpayers and the activists and the people who care, who show up to the meetings to talk to their and engage their government. He tries to shout them down, and it's not happening anymore. I mean, craziness is happening. I mean, up is down, down is up. The cows have come home. The pigs are flying.
Ball and chain.
Yes.
Big victory.
I mean, I want you to take a look at this. After decades of silence, Joe Carollo's daughters have broken their silence. And they told Linda Robertson at the Miami Herald, Kelly Carollo, 32, she's an interior designer in New York City. She hasn't seen or talked to her father since 2003. She says, quote, "We used to get a birthday phone call 2 days late, but that stopped. I was emotionally attuned as a child, I'm told, and I remember I used to cry when he held me. He was not likable, and I just sensed it." Her memories of him, quote, him yelling, throwing tantrums, being unpleasant, end quote. Asked if there's another side of Carollo beside his cantankerous public image, Kelly paused. "No," she said. "He's a controlling, chauvinistic man who has to dominate and make others suffer. What have I learned from my father? To seek the exact opposite of him in a partner." Caroline Carollo, 34, a Miami attorney, has had no contact with her father since 2008. She said the most important lesson she's learned from him is, quote, "It is better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt." By the way, Kelly Carollo was 10 years old 20 years ago when she called 911 to report that my dad is hurting my mom.
Yeah, wife beater.
My dad's hurting my mom.
What happened?
My dad's hurting my mom.
What's your address?
In her house.
Give me your address, ma'am.
Please come now, please.
You home with any weapons, a gun or knife, anything?
I don't know. No, he doesn't have anything.
Give me your last.
Well, Joe Carollo has victimized his wives, his children, and the city of Miami. But no more. Commissioner Miguel Gabela, thank you for joining us. Again, and thank you for telling your truth and speaking truth to power and being a voice for so many who have felt powerless and voiceless. And that includes thousands of decent, hardworking city workers who have been held hostage through this toxic culture of fear and revenge and intimidation that has run the city. You were elected on a mandate of anti-corruption, of pro-accountability, and now you have joined your colleague, sitting Commissioner Damian Pardo, elected the same election as you were this past November, calling for the resignation of Miami Mayor Francis Suarez. Let's start there, because we are turning the page here in the city of Miami, and these are exciting days. Why have you asked for the resignation of the mayor?
So first, before I get to that, let me thank you for having me on your program, and let me just also say that I'm not the sheriff in town. I'm one of the sheriffs in town, because Pardo is also a sheriff. Commissioner King is also a sheriff. Manolo Reyes is also a sheriff. So we're kind of 5 sheriffs here. It's just that we've been accustomed to here in the city of Miami to having one sheriff, which was Coro, that was imposing his will, and now that's gone, and he's having a little bit of a temper tantrum because he can't deal with it. But that's the fact of the matter. So we're many sheriffs, and I'm proud to be here. Billy sitting on Pardo, and Commissioner King, especially, as I say, Manolo Reyes, the good commissioners that actually want to get things done for the benefit of the residents. And now the question was, I'm sorry, your original question, Francis, right? Why I was calling for the resignation of the mayor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what happened to me was Pardo must be given credit, because he was the first one that actually called for the resignation of the mayor. So that credit cannot be taken away from him. I joined Pardo days later because what happened to me, as you well know, I wanted to give him a chance to speak in front of the commission. He wanted a meeting with us. We had the meeting, and it was clear to me after that meeting that he was not going to show up to the commission. I don't think he's going to have many answers for us, because they're not good answers according to the accusations that the Herald has made. That's my impression of the body language and what I took away from that conversation. I then switched gears because I realized when he, as you know, I made it public weeks earlier that I made no bones about it, that I was going to motion to put my house back in the district. For those of you that don't know, excuse me, my house was taken out of the district June 14th, illegally, to favor then candidate Commissioner Portilla, which was then arrested on corruption charges. And then at the same time, Carollo's house in District 2, which was never part of District 3, was put into District 3 to favor Carollo. Carollo that day gained an advantage, a benefit they didn't have before, because unlike my house that was always in District 1 for more than 23 years, Carollo's house was never in District 3. They did that to accommodate Carollo, so he would have homestead exemption. Now he has protection against his creditors, against Bill Fuller and Company, and the $63 million lawsuit awarded to them. And he now doesn't have to rent in Little Havana like he had to before. Now he can move to his house and still be part of the district. So they broke Coconut Grove up in half to accommodate Mr. Carollo. This is a pure benefit that he gained. Okay. What I was trying to do was to put my house back in the district as it's always been. I'm not gaining a benefit. They took a benefit away from me. I was just regaining that act, that resolution that was passed on June 14th, which in my view was illegal. There was malfeasance involved, and probably they violated the Sunshine Law. Okay.
Now, to be perfectly clear, Commissioner, to people listening, is essentially what happened is there was an illegal and in fact unconstitutional redistricting process. Multiple judges, appeals courts have already found this to be the case. In addition to the racial gerrymandering involved, there was, as you put it, this kind of corrupt horse trading going on between Joe Carollo, Alex Diaz-Portilla, in which they were putting, for their own personal, political, and just personal benefit, their own homes and their opponents, in your case, home, in and out of the districts as they wished, which undoubtedly gave them a benefit. They did not recuse themselves from that vote. The city attorney, Vicky Mendez, allowed them to vote on these matters that had a benefit to them, which one could reasonably assume was a conflict of interest. And now, in your effort to undo that illegal and unconstitutional redistricting effort and put things back simply to the way they were before, now there's all these accusations against you that you're acting in your self-interest, that you have a conflict and should have recused yourself from this vote, that there's some sort of state law that prohibits you from doing this. The mayor has argued. What do you say to your critics about this?
I got plenty to say. The mayor's a hypocrite at the least, and intellectually dishonest at the worst. Why do I say that? Because he cites a law that took effect July the 1st, after July the 1st, that this, in other words, if this kind of thing were done to me after July the 1st, it wouldn't have flown. Their resolution wouldn't have passed because they were clearly taking a candidate out. Now, he's citing this law and hiding behind this law, okay, because he's got a personal vendetta. I think he wants to join the bad guys, and he's got a personal vendetta against myself. Why? Because, look, I just didn't return the call. The man called me on election day, and I couldn't talk to him. I didn't talk to him till 10 days later. I think he's resented about this because maybe he thinks I'm not showing him respect. And this is his way of showing me that, hey, you mess with me, I have veto power, okay, which is okay. He has the right to do what he has to do, and I got the right to do what I have to do. But here's the thing. He's hiding behind the law that says, the July 1st law, that says, number one, there must be an election. In this case, in my case of trying to right the wrong that has been done to Coconut Grove, the Grovenites, the disenfranchised voters in Grove, the disenfranchised voters in District 1, because there were 3 houses apart from mine that were taken out just south of me during this process. So many voters have been disenfranchised without them even having a say in this process, and this was done all illegally. And so the fact of the matter is that the July 1st ruling, or statute, if you will, that Tallahassee passed early in the year and took effect July the 1st, doesn't apply in this case because, number one, that applies to when there's an election or 270 days before an election or a candidate or an incumbent. In this case, I am not an incumbent because there is no candidate. I am a sitting commissioner, but I am not an incumbent because there is no candidate, because there is no election.
And
there's not going to be an election.
In fact, Commissioner, that law that the state passed was specifically to make it illegal what it is the city of Miami did to you last summer.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
exactly what the law does, because what they did was so flagrantly inappropriate. So I guess my question is, I mean, I'm looking at the agenda for next week. This is going to be a wild meeting. I've done a strip club flyer for it because this is the hottest show in town, this novella at City Hall.
Laugh, man. You're making me laugh.
I mean, the agenda is absolutely wild. There's all kinds of things on there. There's the absentee mayor and his side hustles. We've got, the reunification of the Grove. We've got Bayfront Park on there and Corollo's corruption over there. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Now, how do you overcome, though? Christine King can vote with you. She can win the meeting, but then she can also win the issue when the mayor vetoes. So she could say, hey, I tried to help, but what can I do if the mayor's going to veto it? So she gets to have her pastelitos and eat them too,
Well, look, in the case of Christine King, she voted in our favor. It was Christine King, Pardo, and myself that voted for the resolution to pass, and it passed. And then the mayor vetoed it simply because now the mayor, after he's been absent for a whole year or maybe more, now he wants to prove to the world that he's the mayor. And what does he do? He vetoes my resolution, okay, which I made clear to the public that I was going to do. I've never hid anything, Billy. I went on Roberto Tejera and other newscast and radio, and I said I was going to do this before it happened. So I've got nothing to hide here. There's no impropriety here. I'm just making myself, I'm remedying my own situation that they put me in with malfeasance in mind to keep me out as a candidate, then running against Commissioner Portilla, and also the city attorney has acted in all of this as she's interfered in this election. She's had 3 lawsuits against me, Billy, and she's lost them all. The latest one, I think she lost on the 28th. I think it was the appeal on the appeal. Okay, and she's lost that too. And at the same time, she tells me that she's working for all the commissioners. Okay. But when we ask her for certain things, we don't get them. Now, if Joe Carollo asks her for anything, he'll get it. For example, right now, I understand that Joe Carollo has another lawsuit against him personally, has nothing to do with the city, it's him personally. And I understand that she's provided outside counsel of 3 separate attorneys. We've asked for outside counsel a couple of days back now, and the email that we got from her is she's got to think about it. And the explanation is very simple. We're asking for outside counsel, okay, because she says that she represents all the commissioners. Well, how can she be representing me when she had 3 previous lawsuits against me? I am now a sitting commissioner, and the 3rd lawsuit she still had against me, which she did not retire willingly or voluntarily. She lost that one in order for that to go away. Okay, so then how in God's name can I trust this woman when this woman has done all of the opposite to try to take me out first as a candidate, and now making it impossible for me as a sitting commissioner? She responds, in my view, to Joe Carollo. She's Joe Carollo's personal attorney, paid by the taxpayer, and this, in fact, is what's going on in City Hall. And Francis now comes in and now wants to use a petty thing that he knows that the law is not on his side. He says he's an attorney. He says he's paid a lot of money for being an attorney. I don't know about that, because this interpretation of this statute, using it for what I did was to put my house the way it was before, and to put the district the way it was before they gerrymandered the district. Okay.
Well, let's be honest, Commissioner. He doesn't get paid over $1 million by Quinn Emanuel, the law firm, to be a lawyer. He gets paid to be an unregistered lobbyist and foreign agent for his private clients, and to exploit his public position for their profit. I mean, that's the bottom line. And you have also, of course, called for the resignation of City Attorney Tricky Vicky Mendez, who I agree has worked as nothing but a mob lawyer for Joe Carollo and the Miami Mafia. How could she possibly be representing your best interests? Of course, you need outside counsel. And you've also revealed at your day 1 of your very first commission meeting that the city has spent over $8 million on just one of the myriad lawsuits that they are defending, the taxpayers are defending Joe Carollo over. We're out of time, Commissioner, but I really look forward to next week's commission meeting. You are Commissioner Miguel Gabela has come to kick ass and eat croquetas, and he is all out of croquetas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Billy, and hope to be on your program very soon. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Hey everyone, I got some exciting news to share with you. We are changing our format from Cafecito Tech Talk to the How Can I Help podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Kingdom Podcast. I am Christine King, Chairwoman of the City of Miami Commission.
Hey everyone, this is Art Noriega, City Manager for the City of Miami. I think it's probably the appropriate time to sort of reintroduce myself to social media. So I'm going to start a regular series where every week or two I'm going to sort of focus on what's happening in the city.
Roy, I have a confession to make.
What's that, Billy?
During the holiday vacation, I'd made a decision that I was not going to come back to the show in the new year. I was going to put it on an indefinite hiatus. This is a lot of work, this show. You know that.
Yes.
And it's a lot of work to prep for. It's a lot of work to produce. And
yes, it is.
I don't get paid for this.
No,
I got to go back to my paying job. And I knew we were doing the right thing. I just didn't know if we were making a difference. And I kind of thought, like, let me put it on the back burner for a bit. Maybe we'll revisit it later in the year. And then a few things happened, Roy. First thing that happened was, while out and about in Miami during the holiday season, I ran into people at restaurants and bars, grocery stores on the street who came up to me and thanked me for what we're doing here. People who thought that they had no voice, that you can't fight City Hall, that this kind of accountability journalism doesn't make a difference. But now we're starting to see some positive change just by virtue of sunlight being the best disinfectant and speaking truth to power, calling these clowns out.
If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out.
And honestly, it was humbling and it was heartening. And it made me feel like, oh, maybe people are paying attention and maybe it is making a difference. And then, as you saw from that little montage that David put together for us, the city of Miami has launched not one, not two, but at least 3 podcasts to counter what it is that we do here on the Because Miami podcast.
The How Can I Help podcast.
How can I help?
That is a shot across the bow.
First of all, he's rebranding the Cafecito Tech Talk podcast because, you know, when anything is successful, the first thing they do, Roy, is they rebrand it.
Exactly.
And they rename it. So Pansi Botalita, obviously that he's a con man is the thing. And so when you're a con man, you don't have a brand. You have to just like go move on to the next hustle, right? So that's what he's doing. He's moving on to the next hustle. Here's the thing. The taxpayers of the city of Miami, Roy, who are the victims of this Miami mafia, of this criminal racketeering organization masquerading as a municipal government, they're financing this. They're paying for this grandma-esque propaganda, this official mouthpiece of the regime. Like all these podcasts, Christine King's The Kingdom, which, by the way, I thought was about Saudi Arabia. But it turns out it's just a pun on Christine King's name. Thousands of dollars an episode taxpayers are spending. Francis Suarez announced in that video they've got a new podcast studio, and Art General Noriega, the city manager, is doing his own podcast now. And all of this, they're explicit in all of these podcasts that this is to counter us. The haters, really, by the way, haters is truth tellers. Because, Miami's one of those places where, lies are love and truth is hate. Where we don't have reality, we have realty. Yeah. And so we've got, people like the
underhanded man-child fail, son.
And
vapid nipple baby with the brain of a mosquito.
Art Noriega. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Art. Into the Oriega. Get out of here, man.
I got to tell you, with a lot of these guys, it's going to be grand opening, grand closing, because I think it's time to turn the page and flush the toilet on all these clowns. But I got to tell you, Roy.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Welcome back.
I mean, if they just ignored us, then we'd all have it a lot easier, But the fact that they are going to combat our facts with their lies, and they're going to continue to victimize the residents, business owners, and taxpayers of the city of Miami by taking advantage of them and continuing to misappropriate their money to do what? To tell lies, to tell everybody that, no, everything is just fine in the city of Miami. Pay no attention. Like, just let us piss on your leg and tell you that it's raining is just literally an extraordinary bit of gaslighting. And that cannot stand, man.
You're definitely right about that. But again, grand opening, grand closing, because Francis Suarez most likely will be arrested, right?
Oh, don't listen. Let me tell you, if this lasts longer than 4 hours, I'm gonna need to call the doctor. When you tease me like that, Roy. So other crazy shit that has happened that has really inspired me to keep going here. We have these new commissioners like Gabela and Pardo calling for the mayor's resignation, calling for the city attorney's resignation, really trying to just, end this era of just criminal impunity in the city of Miami government is very inspiring. Also, breaking news this week, the federal government, the SEC to be precise, is suing Rishi Kapoor for fraudulently defrauding his investors. This is the guy, by the way, who is secretly paying Mayor Francis Suarez $10,000 a month, at least $170,000 to be his quote-unquote secret consultant, while the mayor's office was working to help Kapoor navigate the city and work through, whatever issues he was having. Basically, his problem solver and fixer and expediter in the city. Meanwhile, Kapoor was paying Miami-Dade's second greasiest mayor, Vince Lago of Coral Gables, and Suarez's cousin, who was a real estate partner of his, over $12,000 a month in rent, totaling over $152,000 for an empty, never-used office building that Lago initially failed to disclose that he owns, at the same time that Lago was helping Kapoor with real estate hustles in Coral Gables City Hall. And now, we talked about this with Jay Weaver, remember, in the last episode of 23. But now, Vince Lago is suing the Spanish language radio station here in Miami, Actualidad Radio, and like a veteran radio journalist, Roberto Rodriguez de Hera, who does outstanding work, suing him for libel because apparently, according to the complaint, he told the truth about him on the radio.
So, that's what it said verbatim?
So that's not what it says verbatim, but I'm paraphrasing, allegedly, because he went on the radio and talked about how Vince Lago's little brother, who they call Little Lago, is a lobbyist for a real estate developer who was looking to get some stuff done and in what they call Little Gables, and Vince Lago was trying to annex that neighborhood into the city in order to expedite this real estate hustle, because everything in Miami, as you know, is a real estate hustle.
Is that a big Lago?
Big old Lago.
Yeah.
Dropped a big old Lago. At politicalcortadito.com, Elaine DeValle does a brilliant job of talking about how Vince Lago ruined his reputation all by himself. Did not need the help of any journalist telling the truth about him to do that. And what's really funny, one of Lago's lawyers represents Joe Carollo and lost that $63.5 million corruption lawsuit last year. So good luck. I just hope the judge doesn't throw this bullshit case out before Actualidad's lawyers have a chance to give this guy a deposition on camera and under oath, because that's going to be a documentary, Roy.
That you might do.
That I'm going to do like during the lawsuit, for crying out loud. That said, because Miami is here to stay.
I think that a guy like me as the nominee will be able to keep the focus on Biden, keep the focus on the Democrats' failures, but then more importantly, after you win the election, start holding these people accountable who have weaponized the legal system to go after their political enemies. And that starts with day one, firing somebody like Jack Smith. That goes to dealing with people who are violating constitutional rights at the state and local government area. Republicans have turned a blind eye to abuses of power for far too long. We need to actually do something about it. In Florida, we've actually done things. We've held people accountable, and we've drained the swamp in a major way. We need that in the United States.
Fear and Florida men on the campaign trail once again.
I was right in the middle of a reptile zoo. And somebody was giving booze to these goddamn things.
We are on the DeSantis campaign death watch. Marc Caputo is the national political reporter for themessenger.com. Are we ready to stick a fork in it yet, Mark? Or to paraphrase Mark Twain, are reports of DeSantis' campaign's demise greatly exaggerated?
I'd say it's a little bit in between. At a certain point, the question is going to be this. Is everything we're seeing on the ground in Iowa, everything we're seeing in polling, both conducted by internet, by phone, by robocall, are all the experts who we're talking to in the Iowa caucus who understand Republican politics and how the caucus works, are all of them wrong? And is DeSantis right? And therefore DeSantis will win Iowa. If they're all right, then yeah, I think DeSantis is pretty much going to be done. He's barely holding on to second in Iowa, well behind Trump. And then in New Hampshire, he's fourth or fifth, DeSantis is. So it's difficult to see how DeSantis could lose Iowa and still make a claim to even being in second place in this race.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
A dumb and dumber chance, yeah. There's a chance. I mean, not a big one.
But also, does Iowa even matter at this point if he comes in second? Does it? Does it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I have to say this in a simple way. Understand the presidential campaigns. So people talk about delegates and all of these things and what you need to win to get to the convention. Presidential campaigns are essentially momentum campaigns. And we've never seen a candidate who's a non-incumbent, and technically, yes, Donald Trump is a non-incumbent, in such a strong position in all of the polling in all of the states. So the rational reasoning goes this way. If Donald Trump wins in Iowa, where he's up by big double digits, what's going to stop him from losing, or better said, what's to stop him from winning in New Hampshire, where he's up by big double digits? And if that happens, what's to stop him from winning in Nevada, where he's up by big double digits? And then South Carolina, where he's up by big double digits. No one has ever won all of the early states and not been the nominee in either party in modern times. And let's say it gets down to a two-person race after South Carolina, where, again, he's up by double digits over Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina. Why is she suddenly going to start to win after losing all this time? And why is Donald Trump going to start losing after winning all this time? It just doesn't add up. So bottom line, yes, Iowa matters because that's sort of the beginning of the snowball effect of Trump's kind of cascade of wins, if indeed he wins. And right now, all the indications are that he's going to win.
Well, to be fair, Trump's base believes that he is the incumbent. So there's that, and there's that too. But my question is I just think that many people in this country don't know just how batshit 2024 is going to be politically in this country. I mean, people thought 2020 was nuts with the pandemic, the George Floyd uprising, with the presidential election that led to an incumbent president of the United States denying the outcome of the election, and an insurrection at the beginning of the following year, the second impeachment of the president at the beginning of 2021. But I think that 2024 could dwarf all of that, and hopefully without a knockwood, a pandemic or a George Floyd-like incident. But I mean, we've got potentially 5 trials of a former president of the United States. We've got all kinds of craziness here. But is that DeSantis's trump card? I mean, is that what he's been waiting in the wings for? Is for this guy to wind up on a private jet to Moscow or Saudi Arabia as a deposed candidate, and there he is, showgirl style, tossing the beads onto the staircase, like going, now the understudy is going to rise here.
Yeah, I think another way to phrase that is the choke on a cheeseburger hope. That is, if you talk to some, I'm not joking, that's actually a phrase. There are some folks in DeSantis' orbit a few months ago, I should say, who were acknowledging privately that, look, doesn't look like DeSantis is going to make it, but hey, anything can happen. And then you'd say, well, what could happen? And then they would literally say, well, Trump could choke on a cheeseburger. So, yeah, that could happen. But, yeah, I might take the under on 2024 being crazier than 2020, simply because when you just listed out 2020, we had a pandemic. I mean, that was really nuts. I'm not saying this is going to be sane by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe we're going to be less crazy. But, we are certainly in uncharted waters here. We have no idea what's going to happen if Donald Trump actually goes to trial, if he gets convicted. It's really, really going to be a mess.
But let me ask you, if Trump chokes on a cheeseburger in that hypothetical scenario, is DeSantis the second guy?
No, not right now. I mean, that's the thing is like he's barely coming in second in Iowa, and again, he might be in third. And if he does come in third, it's hard to see him staying in the race. Now, that having been said, when you start to kind of drill down into the minor Republican voters, Ron DeSantis is much more in line with today's Republican voters and Republican Party than Nikki Haley is. But he, in part because of the way in which he's run his campaign, DeSantis has, and in part just because of the dynamics of the race, there's been the space created for Nikki Haley to sort of fill this void and be sort of this alternate brand X.
Quick, Mark, what was the cause of the Civil War?
Slavery.
Not the role of government, not states' rights? Roy, what was the cause of the Civil War, Roy?
The states' rights to have slavery.
Exactly. It was the role of government to have slavery. I mean, this is, what's really remarkable, by the way, of Nikki Haley's Civil War slip up there is like it was in New Hampshire. If you go to New Hampshire on the campaign trail or whatever, and you go in these lovely small New England towns, you'll actually see Civil War monuments and statues of Civil War soldiers, but they're not Confederate soldiers. They are Union soldiers, right? And so for her to come up there in that patriotic place to say, we don't basically, silent on slavery, That just does not hunt. That dog does not hunt in New Hampshire at all. And you saw the result.
Dude, she was the governor of South Carolina, the first state to secede from the Union, the first domino that fell on the road to civil war, and they were explicit in their secession documents.
At the very beginning. At the very beginning. Yeah, I know.
The S word was right there. I mean, it was right there. She just couldn't reach up and grab it off the shelf.
They're trying to forget history, Billy. You know how it is.
Oh, man. Mark, so last couple things. First, what does a defeated DeSantis returning to Florida look like? What is the revenge tour when so many Florida lawmakers, I mean, he probably perceives it, betrayed him, endorsed Trump early and often. They've got a legislative session coming up that's going to run concurrent to his losing effectively the Republican primary. What does this look like? Is he powerless? Is he out for blood? What is Florida? What is a Florida with the DeSantis like retribution tour look like?
I don't fully know that, but number one, only about 8, 9, I think about 8 Florida legislators out of 160 have endorsed Donald Trump. So there's not going to be that much revenge meted out on those Republicans mainly in the House. Now, that said, yeah, he does return. DeSantis, he would return. He will return. Diminished politically overall, but he still has powers of office, which give him line item veto authority. That is, he can cross out little sections of the budget and cancel hometown spending projects and lawmakers. And he can also veto their entire legislation. He's shown a willingness and a zeal for using his veto pen, and has certainly communicated to people not to cross them and shown them what happens when they do, or when he even perceives a slight. So he's not going to be that weakened legislatively. So the question to kind of recast is, what does a DeSantis look like after he comes back home and has to sort of rebuild his brand sort of nationally through his office? I do see him continuing to pick culture war fights, continuing to govern as a very reactionary and powerful conservative. I would caution people against writing his obituary. The guy's 44. There's a lot of time for him to run for office again. So you were going to see. Now, the reality is he does get out of office in 2 years, right? And there's going to be an extra 2 years there for him to sort of do nothing. And the question is, who's going to succeed him? And there is chatter about Casey DeSantis, his wife possibly running again, because that carries on the DeSantis name, and it also sort of keeps him relevant and possibly eyeing another presidential run. I don't know.
That's BS.
But that's some of the
totally BS.
The rise of Tacky O. Speaking of Republican primary losers, I know you read the news, the Miami Herald, their bombshell investigative series, Shakedown City, which covered the latest scandal regarding Miami Mayor Francis Suarez. One of the shortest primary campaigns in the history of Estados Unidos. You tweeted in reference to this scandal involving the mayor possibly working as an unregistered foreign agent for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, particularly using his mayor's office. Saudi Arabia is a client of his private law firm, and he used the mayor's office to help set up this junket, this kind of infomercial that happened in Miami Beach. And according to your Twitter feed, you were actually offered a chance to interview Live Golf's Greg Norman at this event that Francis helped put together.
Sports!
And despite good money, you turned it down because they wouldn't let you ask the questions, I don't know, como se dice, a journalist would want to ask. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so I got a text message from a PR person who I've known in the past, but not very well. And they offered me this chance, like, hey, do you want to come to this Live Golf event? You've written about Live Golf in the past. You can talk to Greg Norman. And I said, look, that sounds great, but like, I don't want to fly under false colors here. If I'm going to have Greg Norman there and I'm going to be talking to you about Live Golf, I got to get into the the Saudi-related issues. And then it was like, well, you sure you got to do that? I'm like, yeah, I kind of have to do that. Right? Like nothing personal. And I told him, I'm not going to devote the entire time to this issue. But if I'm talking to him about this, like it would be a conspicuous absence not to ask about this kind of very timely issue. Again, having written about it, literally people criticizing Donald Trump for having the Live Golf tournament hosted in Doral, I said I just couldn't see how I couldn't ask about it. So we went sort of back and forth, and we just couldn't make it work. So I thought it was just best to just not fly under false colors, say, look, I'll do this happily, but I can't just be silent. And they're like, well, we probably need someone to be silent about it. I mean, they didn't quite say that, but that certainly was the implication. I don't know who wound up doing it, but I can assure you this, they didn't ask about the Saudis, 9/11 and Live Golf.
And to be clear then, this event that Mayor Francis Suarez helped to put on, this was effectively a sports washing type of event, right? This was a PR event, a junket, an infomercial, the way I've characterized it. I mean, that was what the information you were going on, no?
Well, I didn't quite know what fully it was, but having written about them in the past, I knew what Saudi Arabia, the sovereign wealth fund, was doing. And so, yeah, I mean, part of the problem that the Saudis have is there's a section of the 9/11 Commission report, which has still not been released, which shows complicity by people in the kingdom in the 9/11 attacks, in 2001. And then in addition to that, you had the new dictator or strongman or whatever we want to call it of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, who had been complicit, allegedly given the order for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post columnist. And the response to this from the Saudis has essentially been to expand their sort of cultural and sport footprint in the United States accordingly. And I'm not saying they have no right to do that, but if you're going to have a reporter or journalist on stage at one of these events, it's certainly stuff I'm going to ask about.
Well, you said no thank you, and Francis Suarez said,
how can I help?
Marc Caputo, national political reporter. Find him at themessenger.com. Thanks, Mark. Happy New Year.
Thank you, man. Happy New Year.
My grandfather, Jerry Cohen, was born 95 years ago and that was in New York, in Manhattan, and has been in Miami more or less since 1946, graduated University of Miami Law School. All four of your kids, 2 sons, 2 daughters, including my father, were born in Miami Beach.
St. Francis Hospital.
Making me a second-generation Miamian, I suppose, in part, anyway, half. You spent part of your time here. I mean, you were always in building, construction, real estate, and for a spell in kind of the peak era of the golden age of Miami Beach nightclubs and entertainers, you were briefly in the nightclub business in what we now know as South Beach, a business that at the time was filled with celebrities, gangsters, and racism. Could you tell us a little bit about what that was like in Miami Beach? And then really, I guess, in the 1950s.
Yes, we're talking about my introduction to the business was in 1948 when I became friends with Murray Wanger, the head of the owner and proprietor and the showman of the Copa. And that friendship continued right up until his passing.
Where was the Copa?
The Copa was on Dade Boulevard, between Alton Road and the Venetian Causeway entrance.
And it burned down.
It burned down.
By dumb luck. Did you do it?
No, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even know Murray, and I didn't frequent the Copa at that time.
If you had burned it down, would you admit it to me now?
I beg your pardon?
If you had burned it down, would you confess it to me now?
No, I would not.
The statute of limitations would be up.
I understand that.
Okay, all right. Miami Beach was basically, I mean, it was the South in the 1950s. It was essentially,
very much so.
It was a sundown town, which meant that black people were not welcome in Miami Beach after dark without, yeah.
Well, they were welcome to do all the jobs that black people were doing in those days.
And that's what welcomed them. They all had to be registered with.
Well, what does that mean? They had to be registered.
Well, that's interesting because when you have to understand how I got in the nightclub business. I wasn't really in the nightclub business at that point in time, but I was friends with Murray. And every year, Murray came back, and I leased the Copa from the then owner of the Copa, and Murray ran it because Murray had beverage department issues.
Oh, was that mob related?
No, not at all.
Oh,
he
right.
was not a mobster of any kind, shape, or form.
Okay.
The mobsters came later, as far as I was concerned.
Oh, no. Right.
But there were very few black acts or entertainment on Miami Beach, at least. They were generally not limited, but generally appeared at the various clubs in Overtown.
Mm-hmm. But you had black employees, and you did occasionally have black entertainers. You said they had to be registered. That's what I was asking.
That's correct.
What does that mean?
They had to get an ID card in order to be on the beach after sundown.
Where would you go?
To the police station to be fingerprinted.
Why? This was just Jim Crow shit?
Absolute Jim Crow.
Uh-huh. And what did you do?
Well, later in the story of my nightclub story, what happened was that Murray Wanger put together a show called the Cotton Club Review. The show was completely black, led by Cab Calloway, who was an entertainer of pre-war days in Harlem. And his orchestra, which Murray Wanger put together, because he didn't keep an orchestra those days, by then, and Lonnie Satin, Sally Blair, these were very big singing acts. And in the lounge, and because a deal could not be made with the then owner of the Copa, I actually flew around the country to try to do so. We leased the Beachcomber from the Barkin brothers, and we opened up the Cotton Club Review. And I say we now because I'm involved in the nightclub business by then, having been in several nightclubs with Murray. And what happened is we had Demita Joe, who at that time had been divorced and a single, and a big star, and a musical group called the Trenaires, which black, playing in the lounge, and it was. I'm just trying to think of some of the entertainers. And they had to go and register. The next nightclub is a small house, about 400 seats, called Ciro's on Alton Road.
How do we get to the...
How did we get to the city of Miami Beach throwing these black people out of the town when the sun goes down?
In this particular nightclub, the mob was just slightly involved.
Right.
That's what you're waiting to hear.
Okay.
And I went into this deal with one of the well-known mobsters, and he and I were partners in the nightclub. And we opened up with Demita Joe and the Trenaires in the lounge. That's the one that had that act. And they were going down to register on Miami Beach for the ID card.
At the police department.
And I said, I'll go with you. And I took them down there in my vehicle. And they were going through the process. And I said, okay, where do I register? And you don't have to register. I want to register. If they have to register, I want to register. So I registered. And that's how you've seen this card, and that's how this card.
He's got props.
Issued.
He's got props. He carries it around in his wallet with him.
I've got two props for you. This is the first one. This is the card. My picture's on the back.
Yeah, it's from the Miami Beach.
And that's 1958.
Miami Beach Police Department.
Good looking guy.
It says in the back, 1958, Miami Beach Police Department. December 3rd, actually, 1958. So exactly, it's last week, in 1958.
About a month after my dad's birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Feliz cumpleaños.
Yeah.
Grandpa, why did you insist upon registering along with the axe?
Well, I thought it was untoward. I had plenty of experience with help that I had needing cards to be on the beach. I did a lot of work where we stayed very late if you're pouring concrete. And so I had to get a lot of my people registered over the years, and I kind of sort of resented it. So I said, if they have to register, I have to register. So fine. All the policemen knew me because I was in the nightclub business.
Tell me about the end of your nightclub business.
After being registered, we played an act in the club, and he was falling flat on his face, and I said to, he was a friend of mine, I asked him to get out of the contract, and I went to my partner, part of the mob issue, if you will, and I told him that we need an act.
He's a mobster, is what you're saying? Or was he mobbed up?
He's mobbed up more than being a mobster.
Okay.
And he said, let me see what I can do. Within an hour or two of telephoning back and forth, he said, what do you think about Sammy Davis Jr.? And he came down, no contract, and until halfway through his performances, and smash hit. And that was the end. I went out on a big, big round of applause with Sammy Davis Jr.
Grandpa, let's flash forward to the 1990s. Gianni Versace moves to South Beach. He buys this beautiful mansion on Ocean Drive and 11th Street. And he wants to build a pool next door, just to the south of his property, right there on the corner, actually, of Ocean Drive and 11th Street. Do you remember this?
Very well.
All right. What happened? What was there, actually, on that corner?
What was there was a hotel I built called the Revere.
You built in 1950?
No, built in 1950, yes. But it was an Art Deco hotel.
Right. Oh, right, in that style.
In the style.
Right. And so Versace wants to knock it down to build what would have been, I mean, what is now this gorgeous pool with this very elaborate mosaic with like 24-karat gold.
Gardens.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Right there next to the house. So tell me about the demolition of the hotel that you built.
Well, I didn't know anything about what was going on with respect to Versace until I read in the paper that a very good friend and an attorney who represented me, Cliff Schulman, was representing Mr. Versace with an effort to demolish the Revere. And I was absolutely shocked. I got a hold of him on the telephone and I said, Cliff, how can you think about knocking down that beautiful Art Deco hotel and representing Versace to do so? So he said, what are you talking about? I said, Cliff, I built it. It's not much of a building. but I said, you can tear it down with my permission.
Well, you told me this story a little bit differently, and I was wondering how you were going to tell it today, because what you told me is that you called him a little later in the process of him working to get the building knocked down.
That's correct.
Yeah, it was a little late. He had to go through design preservation. He had to go through all of these.
That's correct.
Jump through all these hoops, and he said you said you called him and you said, I built that garbage building, and I hope you knock it down. And he says, Jerry, we're very good friends. Why didn't you call me sooner? If I had the original builder of the building to appear at these meetings and to tell, to basically say there's no historic value, we would have gotten done easier. And you said to him, and admit I built that piece of shit? That's how you told it to me, and I was. Do we have to bleep that, Roy? I don't know if we have to.
No, I think you're the one who embellished that story.
No, that's how you told me the story. What is it? Props, Roy.
Props.
We have. What do we have here, Grandpa? Careful.
No, I first said to him that how can you demolish that gem? That's where you. And I said I built it. He said, no, you didn't build it. Allied built that. I said, that was me. But by then I was laughing so hard, is what I told you, that I said, Cliff, tear it down. It's a mess of a building.
What do you have there?
Well, Clifford gave me he was with Greenberg Traurig.
The law firm, yeah.
The law firm, Greenberg Traurig. And it says, built by Jerome Cohen, in 1950, demolished in 1993. Yeah, I think so.
Right. So it's a rock. So I'm guessing it's a
piece of the concrete.
It's
like the Revere. It says Revere on the top.
It's kind of like a rocky. It's almost like the Berlin Wall. It's like this jagged piece of rock with a plaque on the top that says Revere Hotel, and then a plaque on the inside by this piece of rubble that says built by Jerome J. Cohen, 1950, demolished by Clifford Shulman in 1993.
J.J. Cohen.
And it is a beautiful pool and garden area now. It's a lovely restaurant there.
Yeah, I made it my business to go to several events there, and it's really outstanding what he did to that corner. By the way, I built 3 identical buildings at that time.
With like the same plans as the Revere?
With the same architect, same plan. One of them, the other one is the Boulevard, but I can't remember for the life of me the third one.
We'll find it, I'm sure. Oh. Grandpa, I love you. Thank you for being here. Happy Hanukkah.
That's it?
That's it. Thank you, Grandpa. I love you. I hope you'll come back again and give us some more great old school Miami stories. And now, the first Miami moment of 2024, Roy. We're going to kick it with City Attorney Tricky Vicky Mendez, the mob lawyer for the Miami Mafia. At a recent hearing, she saw that I was on the Zoom. And this is a court case that involves her and her husband allegedly exploiting her public position for his private real estate hustle of allegedly preying on vulnerable elderly and sick homeowners in Miami for this house flipping scheme that he's got going. So they're being sued over this. And during this Zoom hearing, after the porn hackers had hijacked the whole thing, she saw me on there. She saw Danny Rivero from WLRN and some other journalists on there. And she was super scared that we were going to report the facts that were coming out of this public hearing. And so wanted to institute a gag order. And the judge said, no, thank you. Cocaine's.
Judge Miller?
Yes.
Good morning. This is Victoria Mendez. How are you?
Good. How are you, Miss Mendez?
Good. Your Honor, I would ask that there's plenty of media in the room. I would ask that you instruct them not to take any photographs and post this on their media pages while the case is ongoing, or at least this day on the hearing.
So you want a gag order?
Not a gag order, Your Honor, just at least not posting of photographs. Unless you let everybody take photographs in your courtroom, that's a different story.
Well, I think if the media were allowed in, they'd have a camera, right? They're allowed one camera, so I'm not sure what the rules are on Zoom. But generally speaking, there was always a pool camera because that was in the courtroom and we only wanted one camera. And everybody shared the feed. With respect to Zoom, I really don't have a problem with it, mostly because I don't have any way to control it, Ms. Mendez. Could you imagine how am I supposed to stop someone from snapping a picture of the screen? And how would I enforce that? And what kind of investigation? It's just sort of impractical. So I'm not going to restrict it.
Okay. Thank you.